When it comes to educating students with autism spectrum disorder in public schools, what exactly is the problem? What are teachers going through? What are parents going through? And most importantly, what are the students going through? Today on The Morning OJ, we hope to get some answers. Hello and welcome to The Morning OJ, a show where youth get to ask the hard questions. I'm your host, Olivia, the O in OJ. My co-host, Jalan, the J in OJ, is out in the field. My sister, Kora, is guest starring with me today. Today, we are talking about the problems when educating students with autism spectrum disorder in public schools. Some of you may be asking, what is autism? It is a developmental disorder that causes a person difficulty with social interactions, communication, and restricted or repetitive patterns of thought and behavior. Jalan is out in the field interviewing teachers about the problems when educating students with autism. Hi, Jalan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jalan Archer from The Morning OJ, out in the field. Welcome to our show. Today, I'll be interviewing two special guests, Miss Skipworth and Miss Bingham. Ms. Skipworth is a special education teacher, and Ms. Bingham is a regular education teacher.
We're actually retired.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Today, I would like to ask them, since both of you taught in the same classroom, what is the most challenging part of teaching a classroom that integrates regular students, and students who have autism?
Well, Jake, man, I'll start first. I'm going to say the first thing is getting the regular ed teacher to buy into a mixed classroom setting, because they're bound down with a lot of time factors, and a lot of times when they think special ed children are going to be a part of their program, they think it's going to slow down their pace. So that's the first thing, just getting these regular ed teacher to buy into your program. The second thing for special ed teachers is to make sure that we're able to take the curriculum and match it up with our students, be able to modify it, break it down so that they will be able to address small parts of it, but in the end, be able to fulfill the whole goal. And that seems to work better with our students. And once general ed teachers can see that this approach really works and that our students are able to handle a regular curriculum, if you just modify it, then I think they're able to easily accept, the challenge of mixing the two groups. What do you say to that, Ms. Bingham?
Well, for me, as a regular education teacher, when they integrated students with special needs, and in this case we're talking about autism, for me it was, number one, I really didn't know a lot about autism. I hadn't been trained on what autism was. I didn't know there was a spectrum of autism, meaning highly functioning versus something else, something else, something else, something else. So having not been trained in it, that was the first challenge. The second challenge was time, because the special education teacher, for example, Ms. Skipworth, I needed to have time to plan, or us work together to plan the curriculum in a way that did not exclude students with autism from being a part of the regular education classroom. At no time should a special needs student feel that they are not part of that classroom, because that's their classroom too. So it was time for me. It was the challenge of planning with another teacher who I did not know, or we just didn't know. I didn't know about autism. So that was the biggest challenge for me back then. And now I've learned that they are teaching teachers about autism in terms of integrating students in the classrooms. But when I was teaching, I really didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how to handle that, but I did the best I could, of course, obviously, to include those students, allow them to answer questions and be a part of the classroom that was theirs as well.
Oh, okay. Well, that's very nice. I'm glad you guys were able to learn this throughout the year and help the kids in the classroom and their needs. Well, thank you guys for coming in and me interviewing you guys.
You're welcome.
And yes, that is it. Thank you. And I'm back with the studio with Olivia.
Thank you, Jalen, for that interview. In the studio now, I want to welcome Dr. Gail Bingham, a retired general education teacher, and Ms. April Green, who has a background in psychology, special education, and educational leadership. Ladies, welcome to the Morning OJ. Have some of our OJ. Have some of our OJ.
Thank you.
Pure orange juice whenever you like.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
My first question after hearing Jalen's interview is for you, Dr. Bingham. It seems like Ms. Skipworth was throwing a little shade about you not wanting to deal with autistic students due to them slowing down your instructional pace. Do you agree with what she said?
No, I don't. Ms. Skipworth and I didn't know each other when I had my first experience with integrating students with special needs. And that was probably the first issue for us, and I'm actually kind of talking to Ms. Green because she's a professional. That was the first issue, is that we didn't really know each other, and so she was absolutely wrong about that. I had no problems with any student coming into my classroom, whatever the situation. I just was not clear about who was doing what. Like in my mind, and it really was never explained to me, and I'm hoping Ms. Green can elaborate. In my mind, and I'm wiping my chin because I got a little juice on it, but in my mind, she was the teacher of the students that were on her class roster. She was the one who did their grades. She was the one who, in my mind, would modify. And so they kind of made a decision at the last minute to put us together. And she had a list of students of maybe 8 or 9. I had 25 plus. And that part wasn't clear to me. So I think maybe she might have felt that I might have had an issue that they were moving into my classroom, but it was our classroom. And I didn't have an issue with that at all. I just didn't understand how we were going to do it. And as time went on, I actually planned the curriculum all of the time. I planned the lessons every day, and it seemed like we never had time to sit together and figure out how do we work this or modify it or make sure when I'm doing the instruction, because I was the one teaching all of the time. And Olivia, you were in my class once upon a time. I was the one doing all of the teaching, and I felt like, you know, we didn't have time to talk and decide how to do it. And then on top of that, we just made sure the kids were mixed in together so that no special needs student was in their own group as opposed to mixed in with the class, because everybody is a student in the class. She had a paraprofessional, and Ms. Green, I'm hoping will elaborate on this. She had 8 or 9 students with a paraprofessional, which is an assistant, to help her. And so I really felt like she was managing or taking care of her students. Those were her students, and I still had to do the grading and speaking to parents and all of the stuff that comes with being a teacher with the 25 plus that I had. So I think I just wasn't clear on who was supposed to do what and why we didn't have time, why it was always left up to me to plan everything. And, you know, I just assumed she would modify the lessons for her students.
I think that you make a lot of valid points, and oftentimes when teachers are thrown into situations where they don't know that they're going to be teaching students that have exceptional needs, such as autism or any other disability, they're not prepared. And that's one of the things that I hear a lot in the field when I work with teachers, general education teachers, and provide the support to them as a special educator. They just don't know. The roles and responsibilities are not clear. So the special educator knows that she needs to take care of the things that she needs to take care of for this student with the special needs. And a general educator is thinking, well, I need to take care of the things that I need to take care of for my students as well. But the thing is, we have to make sure that we have clearly defined roles. We have to be able to collaborate with one another and build that time in. And a lot of that built-in time is not going to just fall on the teachers facilitating that. We have to make sure that we have support from the administrators in the building that are making sure that we are facilitating our teachers to have that time to collaborate. Because if you're going to expect for inclusion to work, if you're going to expect for general education teachers and special education teachers and service providers to be able to work together collaboratively in order to plan for the students that have needs effectively, it's going to take the team and it's going to take time to do so. And if you're not facilitating that time, if you're not as an administrator making sure that your teachers' needs are being met, that they understand what the roles are of the special educator and the specialist and the general educator, and you're not facilitating that collaborative time and promoting best practices to promote effective inclusion, it's just not going to happen.
And I'll tell you something else. I'll share with you all. And that teacher is one of my best friends now. But I remember she even was a little upset that I had decorated the whole classroom because the special educators were out at a workshop and we had to have it done by the time the students came back. So I did the whole classroom, and I think she felt like she needed to have input in terms of what was on the bulletin boards, you know, that kind of thing. But it wasn't, there was no time. It was like we got to school, things had to be done, people had to go to workshops, you know how it goes at the beginning of the school year.
Yes.
So that was a little challenging.
I'm sure it was.
Okay. Ms. Green, with your extensive background, can you add any clarification to the discussion and share your knowledge about autism spectrum disorder, its symptoms, forms, and the autism spectrum?
Yes, I will be happy to do so. Well, as far as autism spectrum disorder, it is a brain-based disorder, and it's considered a spectrum disorder because it has different ranges. We have different types of autism, different forms of autism. Recently, in 2013, the DSM-5, which is the manual that has the diagnostics and statistics, excuse me, of different mental health disorders. Autism used to have different labels and categories, but now the different forms of autism fall all under one spectrum. For example, one form of autism spectrum disorder is Asperger's syndrome. When you look at Asperger's syndrome, this disorder focuses on...
Sadly, I have to cut you off. Unfortunately, we have to take a short break. But up next, we'll hear Mrs. Green and her husband share some interesting experiences you won't want to miss. Stay tuned.
This is the story of a boy who didn't talk for a long time. The boy liked things to always be the same. Any changes would scare and upset him. The unknown was an unfriendly place. The boy was very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where they couldn't get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. He wasn't trying to be mean, it just made him feel uncomfortable. Sometimes he would flap his arms again and again.
One day, I found out I have something called autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I found my voice and learned all the ways I could live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
Welcome back to the Morning OJ, a show where youth ask the hard questions. Please welcome back Mrs. April Green, who has background in psychology, special education, and educational leadership, as well as her husband, Mr. Green. Mr. Green, feel free to sip our OJ if you feel thirsty.
I'm quite all right.
Okay.
Glad to be here, though.
Okay. So, Miss Green, you were talking about the autism spectrum before we cut you off. Can you please finish?
Yes, I'll be happy to. Like you all shared earlier, when someone lives with autism spectrum disorder, they're going to have concerns in the areas of communication, social, and behaviors. When you're looking at someone who lives with the form of autism called Asperger's disorder, they typically do not have concerns in all three of those areas. What it will look like, they typically have normal intellectual abilities, are able to communicate, and have normal patterns of behaviors, but you're going to see issues when it comes to socialization. They might be uncomfortable in groups and have a hard time connecting with others. And persons living with Asperger's syndrome are considered to be more on the higher functioning range of the spectrum. So you do have autism spectrum disorders where the person living with autism is not able to communicate, has difficulty with social and behavior problems, and that's why it's considered a spectrum. And the different abilities as far as able to communicate and socialize and different behaviors can range depending on the person.
So, Ms. Green, you are now speaking as a parent of autistic children. Will both of you please tell us about your children, their ages, where they are on the spectrum, and share some challenges and or successes you have had during their public school education?
Sure, we'll be glad to.
Yes. Well, my children are ages 12. My son is 12, and I have two daughters aged 8 and 7. And as far as my oldest child, they were all diagnosed about 5 years ago. And the youngest was diagnosed before the second oldest, and it was in backwards order. So the needs for my oldest son, he went through school, most of school, without getting any help. So when we started noticing the quirks, basically autism, knowing anything about autism, you notice a lot of quirks, a lot of quirky things like, okay, why are you so upset because we're not gonna go to Chuck E. Cheese? I mean, we'll go to Chuck E. Cheese next week. But I noticed a lot of quirks, some specific to each individual child. But my son, when he was presenting his quirks, he needed to have his coat on in school, and he needed to chew bubble gum at school. And those were accommodations that the teacher and the school needed to make, because other than those things, he could focus on school, and he said he focused more with bubble gum. So it was just a lot of quirks from each individual child. So just because I learned his quirks had nothing to do with my middle child quirks or my youngest child, because they on different ranges of the spectrum.
Yes, I would say that Stone and Haley, the oldest two, they present more as having Asperger's syndrome, where they are higher functioning. You wouldn't think that they were living with autism spectrum disorder unless you really had an opportunity to sit with them and be around them, and then you would start to notice some of the different, like my husband just said, some of the different quirks. With my middle child, she really has issues with transitioning and just adapting to change. That was pretty much the main hallmark with her as far as her diagnosis, because she was super intelligent, communicated really well, has a big vocabulary. She did start to talk late, so that could have been an indication, but once she started to talk, she never stopped. And I also noticed that she's hyperlexic, where she's able to read and retain information and absorb it like a sponge and can spit it back out at you at any time. So she was developing well as far as her academics, but she couldn't handle certain situations. If I put her on an outfit and the outfit didn't fit, I couldn't go and change her clothes without her having a meltdown, because that was like a transition and a change. She couldn't handle if we were supposed to go to the playground and it's raining outside, and she couldn't handle that change. She couldn't accept the fact that it's raining and her plans to go outside, because she had been planning about it all day, thinking about going outside.
I don't think we noticed it as parents. I don't think we noticed it as parents. We didn't really notice anything until my youngest child couldn't communicate with us and would get very angry and hit and bite. He was biting herself. She had a big mark on her wrist because she just kept biting that part of her wrist. That's when we knew something's going on here. So we started talking to people who could help us and give us more insight once we noticed my youngest child. But with the other two children, they're so bright, I had no idea anything was going on.
It was hard to tell. And I think a lot of times when you have people living with autism, because they're bright and they're able to do certain things, they can talk well, they can socialize, and you really don't see the symptoms of autism in them. A lot of times people have a hard time accepting that the person actually lives with the disorder.
And I'll say this, your child's symptoms may mimic your own quirks. So if you do stuff that's odd, I draw, my daughter loves to draw. You know, I don't like schedule changes. My daughter hates schedule changes. So you might want to, nothing's wrong with my child because they act just like you act. But, you know.
Yes. And as far as our youngest daughter, I would say that she, as far as the spectrum, she falls at on a lower range of the spectrum, where her autism, you can tell she's living with something. You know, she has all of the hallmarks as far as the communication and the social aspect, wanting to be off to herself, and also repetitive and kind of different behaviors as well. Hers are more extreme as compared to our other children.
And she can't take different environments.
Unfortunately, we have to cut you off. Thank you both for sharing your extraordinary stories and information in our last segment. We have another parent along with her child ready to share their experiences. So I hope you all will stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hey, let's check out this park. Oh, wow, that's really cool.
To find a great local park or forest near you, go to discovertheforest.org.
Welcome back once more. Joining us in the studio is Mrs. Denise Oseni and her talented son. What is your name? How old are you?
My name is Toyin. I am 15, and that's all I am.
Okay. That's awesome. I'd like to welcome you both to our show.
So, Mrs. Oseni, can you share with us where your son is on the autism spectrum, as well as some of the knowledge and experiences parenting and educating a talented son with autism?
Well, Toyin is on a higher function end of the spectrum. However, he does have some disabilities, learning disabilities, because even though you're in a higher end, you still can have learning disabilities. And so with Toyin, he is able to, he looks normal, he acts normal. However, this have been a struggle. It didn't start off easy. He had a lot of severe challenges, like he was a flapper, he stemmed a lot, he was a runner, so he exhibit a lot of signs of a lower functioning autistic kid. However, through a lot of services, because he'd been receiving services since he was 2 years old, we were able to have those quirks, as they mentioned earlier, to disappear. So even though socialization, he wouldn't really socialize with people. However, he always was into singing and dancing, and entertaining. So he didn't talk. However, he would sing. He knew all the songs on Barney and Sesame Street, but that wasn't talking. So that's let me knew that something was going on with him, and that I needed to make sure that he gets the services he needs so that he can be able to communicate with the kids and me and my family and things of that nature.
What has been the worst and best experience you and your son had when it comes to public schools and special needs education? Either or both of you can answer.
Okay, so when Toyin, when we used to live in Prince George's County, we do not now, but at the beginning of his career, we did infants and toddlers, and that's where we received the diagnosis, and they had phenomenal services. But once he started in school, they didn't recognize his diagnosis as autism as a special education diagnosis. They more or less said it was a medical diagnosis. So I had to hire an attorney to fight for his rights. And so I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. So we moved out of the county so that he can get better services. And since I've done that, like he has problems with reading, so a lot of things he does on the computer. But that's something that he's able to get right now, and as also he's able to a lot of his instructions is done on the computer. He has difficulties writing, but he has a large vocabulary, and so I wanted him to have those special services to help him to be a productive citizen in society, and I just felt that he would not be able to have that here if I continue to stay here in Prince George's. So. Right now he's doing well for his education the best he can. He's also in self-contained classes. I know they do a lot of mainstreaming. However, self-contained is better for him because it's other special ed teachers, other special education students in there with him, but he has a smaller classroom size, which allows him to feel comfortable in his own skin.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us?
I also would like to say that, he looks normal. So sometimes, even though he looks normal, he does still have his, it's not a visible disability with autism. So that's something that you have to be mindful of. We're currently in, he got bullied this year. So we are currently in a legal situation right now. I really can't speak much about it, but it's also creates a problem because he doesn't make good judgment because of the social skill aspect of it. However, that also can hurt you because he looks normal and you can't see his disability, but he's not able to communicate a lot of what he's feeling and what he's going through. So that's something that you're not mindful of as if you're someone compared to someone who's normal who can tell you what's going on with them. So I think that's something that even autism is something, sometimes you can see it and sometimes you cannot. So you have to be mindful of that because it's a spectrum. We all don't look the same. All children with autism don't look the same.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
That I'd like to add? Just also embrace students, peers that are different. And I think that's something that we are lacking in our community is that when we see someone who's different with autism, we don't really know how to approach them. So I say that, just be open-minded because they're kids and they want to be treated the same as you will want to be treated. And I think that it's nice to, they want to play, they have all the things and desire that you want as a child, they want to do, but they want to be accepted. And that's what acceptance is the key.
Unfortunately, our time is up. I'm hoping we can have a part 2 for our next show, and all my guests can return to discuss this important, eye-opening topic. Thank you all for turning in to the Morning OJ. Don't forget your OJ in the morning because it has a lot of vitamin C. Until next time.